نوجه نداء صادقا
كل أمل ونجاح.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's top stories. Grand Mufti Sheikh Abdul Latif Daryan inaugurates the opening of the Ramadan village in Beirut, calling for the election of a new president. Maronite Patriarch Michela stresses in a sermon at Kirki the institutional nation building begins by electing a head of state, then proceeding forward. Nearly 40 strikes hit rebel-held areas in and around Syria's Aleppo city in some of the heaviest recent raids by Russian and Syrian government warplanes. Grand Mufti Sheikh Abdul Latif Daryan is inaugurating the opening of the Ramadan village in Beirut, where meals will be provided to families in need throughout the holy month of Ramadan. He has also called for the election of a new president to preserve Lebanon's stability, stressing on the need to end the vacuum that is impeding state institutions. Lebanon has been without a president for more than 2 years since former President Michela 6-year term ended in May 2014. Parliament just failed for the 40th time on Thursday to elect a new head of state due to a lack of quorum. A man who allegedly suffers from a psychological disorder has murdered his mother in a town east of Beirut. Ibrahim Rasi, who is 42 years of age, stabbed his mother, Abodokia Ma'mari, who is 96, multiple times in the head and chest on the 4th floor of the Bshara building in Hazmiye. Rasi told the police that he has taken revenge on his mother, who used to beat him as a child. A forensic team arrived at the scene as police detained Rasi and transported him to the Babda Judicial Palace. Maronite Patriarch Michela is stressing in a sermon at Kirki that institutional nation building begins by electing a head of state, then proceeding forward. Assisted by 4 bishops, the Patriarch had recited verses from the New Testament Gospels of Luke depicting the apostles following in the footsteps of Jesus, to the contrary of those who persecuted and crucified him. He added that crisis-ridden families and communities are largely due to a malfunction in the relationship with God, and that this relates to the disintegration of the state as well. He said that politicians need to go away with their malpractice by halting all bickering among themselves and by reviving the state institutions which remain over and above narrow interests. Nearly 40 strikes hit rebel-held areas in and around Syria's Aleppo city in some of the heaviest recent raids by Russian and Syrian government warplanes. Rebels also hit government-held parts of the city, which was an escalation in mortar attacks on the western parts of the country's largest before the war. Missiles had fired on Hamadaniya and the Midan areas by insurgents left scores injured and several casualties in the second day of intense shelling of government-held areas, which left at least 24 dead a day earlier. The aerial raids come in the wake of Friday's strike on civilian areas that residents said were the most intense in over a month. The city, Aleppo, which has been divided for years between rebel and government-held zones, has borne the brunt of deadly bombardments that have all but destroyed a February ceasefire that has killed dozens. Tehran is dismissing its renewed blacklisting by Washington as a state sponsor of terrorism, charging that it was U.S. allies, including Riyadh, that were the real culprits. The Iranian Foreign Ministry noted its role in neighboring Iraq, supporting the government against Daesh independently of a U.S.-led coalition, as well as its backing for the Syrian government against extremists and other rebels. Foreign Ministry spokesman Hussein Jabir Ansari said that Washington's support for Israel, despite its decades-old occupation of the Palestinian territories, made it the biggest sponsor of state terrorism. In its latest annual report published earlier the week, the U.S. State Department said Iran had boosted its support for Palestinian militants group in Gaza last year, as well as Lebanon's Hezbollah, which has deployed thousands of fighters to Syria in support of President Bashar al-Assad. The Prime Minister of Libya's UN-backed unity government has ruled out international military intervention to fight the Islamic group Daesh, which has had growing presence in the country since 2014. Some 25 nations, including the United States and Russia, agreed last month to help Libya arm itself against the jihadists. But Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj told French newspaper Journal du Dimanche he would not allow foreign troops on the ground, but rather the need lies with satellite images, intelligence, and technical help, and not bombardments. He further added that the war against terrorism will be able to unite Libya, but not for long. Coming up next, 2 days left till the California primary, and we've got Michela to discuss this with us. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Joining us live is Michela, a founder of the Organizing Center, an online hub for promoting cutting-edge organizing strategy and tactics. He currently works as Vice President for Innovation at DKC, recently named the #1 most powerful public relations agency by the New York Observer. And he was previously Vice President at Nation Builder, where he managed a team of 50 digital organizers who built engaged communities for political parties, governments, nonprofits, and major brands in dozens of countries. And for that work, Michael was named one of the 50 top campaign influencers in America by Campaigns and Election magazine. Thank you for being with us, Michael.
Hey, thanks. It's great to be here.
Michael, there are 2 days left until the California primary, quite a significant primary. On the Republican side, we've got the presumptive nominee, Donald Trump. But on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton is around 60 delegates short of claiming the Democratic nomination. But however, the total of 544 superdelegates who are unelected and are free to support any candidate, well, Bernie Sanders says he can probably sway them to come on his side. What do you think of that?
Well, it'll be tough because you got to remember who these folks are. These are the people that are the backbone of the Democratic Party. They're people that hold elected officials and hold elected positions within the Democratic Party. And for the last 20 years, the Clintons have been supporting those folks and giving them quite a lot of resources, whether it's people or dollars. And Bernie Sanders hasn't been. So this group of 600 folks who are the so-called superdelegates, they have long-standing relationships with the Clintons, and they don't really know Bernie Sanders quite as well as a friend and an ally of the Democratic Party. So it'll be very difficult for him to sway their votes and sway their minds.
Do you think that if he wins California, then it's still quite an open race, isn't it? Or it doesn't really matter?
It's highly likely that on Tuesday, Hillary Clinton will have enough delegates to proceed as the sure bet nominee. Now, what it'll do if she loses California, and I don't think she will, I think she'll win narrowly, but if she did lose California, what it would do is cause a lot of hand-wringing and a lot of frustration within the ranks of Democratic leaders about her campaign. They'll wonder, hey, is this really the candidate that we want? But at the end of the day, there'll be enough Clinton loyalists dyed-in-the-wool ready to go vote for her at the convention that she'll have locked in the nomination.
You're talking about the convention, but I know everybody, in the media talks about it, but it just seems that Donald Trump, his odds of winning the U.S. election this November, well, they can't be so low anymore because everybody's saying, well, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. But he's been getting a lot of hype in the media and amongst the American people and even in the polls. So what do you think would happen if he is elected?
Well, America is a very evenly divided country.
Right.
And so any major party nominee has a shot. That's why we have an election day and we don't just preordain somebody as our leader. We have to play it out. There are some major things going against Donald Trump. Major structural problems where half of the Republican Party has a big issue with who he is. The Speaker of the House, the most powerful person in the Republican Party, has been pretty antagonistic toward Donald Trump. But that said, he could be the President of the United States of America. Not a great chance, but he could be. And
what do you think of his policy? If countries like Japan and Saudi Arabia don't want the U.S.'s help anymore, they must pay for their own defense. They can acquire nuclear weapons. America has to come first. What about that? What seems to be an isolationist worldview.
The key thing to remember is that the President of the United States has only a small fraction of the power in terms of how the United States is run. And that's intentional, actually, because our country was founded as a reaction against monarchies. We don't like it when one person has all the power. The media focuses on that person, but really there are thousands and thousands of people making these policies. So what would likely happen in a Trump administration wouldn't be so much that everything would go up in flames. It would be that there would be a lot more gridlock. Probably it would be more of nothing happening rather than lots of things happening.
And I want to end on this question. I know we're talking about Hillary Clinton, who is currently leading in the polls, but she is facing an FBI investigation into her leaked emails. If she is indicted, and I've heard about, talking about the power of the president, she can pardon herself. But what would that do if she is going to face charges if indicted?
Yeah, it's highly unlikely that there's any real legal action against Hillary Clinton. This is sort of a lot of puffing by her opponents to try to keep their own base home and in the Trump column, rather than considering a fairly moderate, well-respected alternative in Hillary Clinton. So I don't see that as really a real option, any more so than Donald Trump being, indicted for tax fraud, for, the myriad financial problems that he's had. Now, yeah, if there were something that actually happened legally, I think it would probably get solved really, really quickly behind closed doors.
It would. So no matter what happens, she's going to be okay, is what you're saying. Even if, if she is indicted, by the time she's president, then it's different than if she's indicted. Could she still win if she's indicted during the campaign before November?
Absolutely, because I think most people would see that as just political posturing. And the alternative being Donald Trump, there's not a lot of Hillary Clinton supporters that wouldn't be willing to deal with her problems the same way Donald Trump supporters are willing to forgive his multiple bankruptcies. At the end of the day, what matters most is your vision for how you want to run the country. And I think people will probably judge both Clinton and Trump first on that vision, and then second on personal flaws or past transgressions.
Well, one thing is for sure, it's going to be an interesting path all the way to November.
It will be, that's for sure.
Thank you for joining us live from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Michael Michela, founder of the Organizing Center, talking to us. Thank you, Michael. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Grand Mufti Sheikh Abdul Latif Deryan inaugurates the opening of the Ramadan village in Beirut, calling for the election of a new president. Maronite Patriarch Shaddai stresses in a sermon at Kirki that institutional nation building begins by electing a head of state, then proceeding forward. And nearly 40 strikes hit rebel-held areas in and around Syria's Aleppo, some of the heaviest recent raids by Russian and Syrian government warplanes. Those are your Sunday headlines live on Future Television. Ramadan Kareem to all our viewers, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
وجه نداء صادقا
كله أمل ونجاح